You'd expect the highest scoring offense to be the 2013 Broncos, maybe the 2007 Patriots, right? At least a team from the modern era. But what if I told you the highest scoring team ever came from 1950? A team that averaged nearly 39 points per game. A number no team has touched in 75 years. What are you saying, guys? It's Zane here. Let's get into the video. Of course, I'm not going to argue that the 1950 Rams are the greatest offense ever. I'm not an idiot. Well, actually maybe I am. But they did cement their place in NFL history by finishing with 38.8 points per game, which remains number one to this day. As it was once said, the results of their games read like basketball scores. So how did the Rams, playing in what we think of as a run-first, defensive-minded league, build such a dominant offense? There were several factors, but I want to focus on what I think was most important. With 8 Pro Bowlers that season and 4 eventual Hall of Famers, the 1950 Rams had seemingly infinite star power. Starting at quarterback, they didn't just have one Hall of Famer. No, that's not enough. They had 2. Drafted in the 4th round in 1949, Norm Van Brocklin was joining a team that already had a Hall of Famer in Bob Waterfield. However, in 1950, new head coach Joe Steidaha began rotating the quarterbacks. Each started 6 games and would often alternate at halftime. Despite the somewhat limited playing time, Van Brocklin, who finished 9th in attempts, actually finished 3rd in yards. Together, the two combined for 3,529 yards, which was almost 1,000 more than the second leading team. To accompany those 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks was, well, of course, 2 Hall of Fame receivers. A precise route runner with glue-like hands, Tom Fears initially played both offense and defense, but it would be as a receiver that Fears left his mark. In his first 2 seasons, he led the NFL in receptions, but 1950 would be his best. He set a new NFL record with 84 receptions and led the league in yards. This is the reception leader every year up until 1950. Apart from Don Hutson, who's one of the greatest receivers ever, nobody is close to this reception record. His best game came against the Packers, when he set a single game record of 18 receptions, which is still tied for 3rd. He also amassed 189 yards as the Rams stomped Green Bay 51-14. Lining up next to him was Elroy Crazy Legs Hirsch, getting the nickname Crazy Legs because, well, just look at how he ran. Remarkably quick, Hirsch excelled at locating the deep ball. Most receivers need to slow down a bit to catch the deep pass, but Hirsch was perfect at catching the ball in stride, after which no defender was catching him. If they did have a chance to tackle him, say if they were in front of him, with those legs going 5 different ways, you didn't know which way he was actually going to go. We talk about yards after the catch, but he would get acres of yards after the catch because he was so elusive in the open field. The Rams' potent offense came at a time that passing was taking off. I mean, relatively, this isn't 1980s, 1990s passing, but the league had shifted from single wing formation, which emphasized more of the run, to the T formation, which was more of a balance between passing and running. Teams began throwing more and therefore scoring more. Hirsch was one of the lead men for that offensive explosion, said to be, quote, the best receiver during his time. So the 1950 Rams are known for their passing prowess, but they also deployed a rotation of powerful runners dubbed the Bull Elephant Backfield. That included Dan Towler, Dick Horner, and Paul Tank Younger. These big bruising backs proved essential in wearing down the defenses, who were already gassed chasing around Hirsch and Fears. So this star power was on full display in arguably the greatest 3-week stretch ever. They became the only team in history to score 60 or more points twice in a season, and they did that back-to-back games. They also posted an NFL record 165 points in 3 weeks. They first beat the Colts 70-27. They followed that up by beating the Lions 65-24. And get this, 41 points came in a single quarter. Those 2 games rank 2nd and 3rd for the most points scored by one team in a game to this day. But the high scores weren't just a product of a team running up the score. The Rams' defense was ranked 9th of 13, so they had to keep scoring or they might lose. The few times their offense was, quote, unproductive, they lost. The only regular season losses came when they scored 20 points or less. But still, their average margin of victory was record-breaking. This is the 1950 Rams compared to some other historically great offenses. The Rams also averaged 436 yards per game, which is astronomical in an era where the average was 310, 120 yards less. But to further put their 38.8 points per game into perspective, the next closest team of the entire decade, the same team a year later, scored over 70 total points fewer, which equals 32.6 points per game. Okay, I can hear it already. Yes, it was the 50s, the competition was weaker, but you can only compare athletes to their competition, and the Rams were miles ahead of their competition, so I'll be damned. What they did was impressive. The fact that they still hold various scoring records is clear evidence how good and how ahead of their time they were. Even by modern standards, a team averaging 300 plus passing yards and 38 plus points per game is extraordinary. The 1950 Rams were doing this in an era of 12-game seasons and more restrictive passing rules. Unfortunately for the 1950 Rams, like many of these prolific offenses, they couldn't finish the job. They were facing the Cleveland Browns in the title game, who were in their first season in the NFL, and on this day the Browns came out on top in what was a shootout thanks to a late game field goal. I suppose defense really does win championships.